The door was never meant to be open. Yet there it was, slightly ajar, breathing temptation into the still air. I didn't knock, I didn't pause. My hand pushed against the frame, and with it, I stepped across a boundary I swore I would never cross. Inside, shadows whispered and silence burned hotter than fire. The moment felt like a secret written by destiny itself, a desire too heavy to keep hidden, too strong to resist. Every step forward was betrayal. Every breath I took was an oath broken. And yet my heart raced with a hunger I could no longer deny. That unlocked door wasn't just wood and hinges. It was the passage to truth, to vulnerability, to the dangerous beauty of forbidden desire. And once I crossed that line, nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. The door stood there, unlocked, like an invitation that was never spoken aloud, but whispered to me in silence. There was nothing ordinary about it. And yet everything about it seemed so normal, so natural, as though fate itself had left it that way. A door is supposed to guard secrets, to shield what is hidden behind it. It is meant to be a barrier, a wall between what is known and what is forbidden. But when the lock was gone, when that line of defense was carelessly left undone, it became something else entirely. It became temptation in its purest form, a quiet seduction calling from the other side. I could feel it the moment I reached out. My hand hesitated, hovering, knowing that the smallest push would not only move wood against hinges, but it would move me into a place from which there would be no return. It was not just a door I was standing before. It was a threshold to something unspoken, something deeper, darker, and far more dangerous than I had ever allowed myself to admit. The unlocked door seemed alive, breathing with secrets, holding its own pulse that beat in rhythm with mine. There was no knock to warn, no permission sought, no pause to reconsider. I was standing in front of a chance disguised as carelessness, a mistake left hanging in the air. And yet it felt deliberate, as if the universe had carved out this moment and placed me directly in front of it. I could almost hear it calling me, urging me to step closer, to take what was being offered without words. The more I stared at it, the more it became a symbol of everything unfulfilled, every desire that had been tucked away, every thought I pretended never existed. Crossing that door was not about curiosity alone. It was about surrender. The absence of a lock stripped away the excuse of resistance. It was an invitation to cross boundaries I had always respected, boundaries I told myself I would never even approach. And yet here I was, unable to pull back, unable to silence the pulse inside me that grew louder with every breath. That door reminded me of temptation itself. It never forces you, it never screams or begs. It simply waits, patient and still, knowing that one day you will come to it. And when you do, all it takes is the gentlest touch, the smallest slip, and you are lost inside a world you can never undo. I could see myself reflected in its frame, not as I was, but as someone different. Someone willing to risk, someone willing to betray, someone willing to embrace the hunger I had buried for so long. It was only a door, and yet it wasn't. It was the edge of innocence, the passageway to something reckless and consuming. I knew if I stepped forward, I would no longer be the person I was before. The unlocked door stood between who I pretended to be and who I truly was when desire stripped me bare. And with each passing second, the choice to resist slipped further away, leaving only the inevitable truth waiting on the other side. I stood there, my hand hovering, the choice as fragile as the space between touch and restraint. That moment, the one where I decided not to knock, was the moment everything shifted inside me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious. There was no thunder, no lightning. No dramatic sign in the world around me. It was quieter than a whisper, yet heavier than any weight I had ever carried. The silence that filled that decision pressed against my chest, making every breath sharper, every second longer. It was as though time itself had slowed, waiting to see if I would move forward or retreat. But I didn't retreat. I didn't hesitate. I surrendered to impulse. Choosing not to knock was choosing not to ask for permission, not to give the chance for denial, not to leave space for rejection. A knock is respect, a knock is restraint, a knock is distance. But the absence of it, that was desire speaking louder than any courtesy, passion louder than any hesitation. It was me stepping into a role I had denied myself, into a version of myself I had buried under layers of control and self-discipline. That single decision carried with it the weight of every secret fantasy, every hidden glance, every suppressed longing. And when my fingers pressed forward, I knew there was no undoing what I had chosen. The wood felt cool beneath my palm. But beneath that coolness burned a fire that belonged only to me. It was not the door that changed, it was me. In that decision, I acknowledged what I had craved all along, but dared not name. The door had always been a symbol, but in that second, it became something more. It became a test of my will, of my morals, of my boundaries. And I failed that test willingly. I let desire dictate my movements, let the heat in my chest consume the logic in my mind. The choice to not knock was not about impatience. It was not about carelessness. It was about hunger, the kind that doesn't wait, the kind that cannot be contained by ritual or formality. It was about claiming what I already felt belonged to me in some hidden, forbidden way. That decision, simple as it seemed, was the moment I allowed myself to cross from longing into action. My hand did not tremble, though my heart did. My breath did not falter, though my soul did. And when the frame gave way beneath my touch, it felt as though I had unlocked something inside myself that had been waiting in the dark for far too long. That moment of choice will always linger, etched in memory not as hesitation, but as surrender. I could have stepped back. I could have knocked. I could have given myself time to think, but I didn't. I walked in, not as a stranger seeking entry, but as someone who had already decided that the rules no longer mattered. In that silence, in that breathless second, my desires spoke louder than reason, and I obeyed them without question. The silence inside was louder than any sound I had ever known. It wrapped around me like a cloak, thick and heavy, pressing against my skin, until I could feel it in every corner of my body. It was the kind of silence that doesn't comfort, the kind that doesn't soothe. It lingers, it burns, it teases with what it hides. Every step I took seemed to echo, though no sound left my feet. Every breath I drew seemed to shatter the air, though the room remained still. That silence was not empty, it was alive, pulsing with secrets that begged to be uncovered, daring me to step deeper into the truth waiting just beyond my reach. The weight of it was intoxicating. It was not the absence of sound but the presence of something else, something unspoken. That silence held the questions I was too afraid to ask, the answers I already knew but pretended to ignore. It carried the heat of glances that linger too long, the brush of hands that hover close but never touch, the dreams that visit in the dark hours of the night, but vanish with the light of morning. And in that silence, all of it returned, amplified, undeniable. My heart became the only rhythm, pounding against my chest, betraying me with its urgency. I could feel the tension in the air, as though it were a living thing. The quiet walls seemed to close in, listening, watching, holding me accountable for the choice I had made by stepping inside. There were no words to hide behind, no excuses to cover the truth. Silence strips you bare, it reveals what sound can disguise. In that stillness, every suppressed desire rose to the surface, no longer chained by reason or buried beneath the weight of denial. The silence gave them permission to breathe, to exist, to scream without making a sound. It was unbearable and irresistible all at once. The quiet was thick, heavy with anticipation, as though it already knew the ending of the story, before I even lived it. My pulse filled the void, my breath became the only confession. I wanted the silence to break, to shatter under the weight of something undeniable. But I also wanted it to hold, to stretch, to make every second feel longer, more dangerous, more intoxicating. In the quiet, I could hear not just the sounds of the room, but the hidden voice inside me. The one I had ignored. The one I had silenced for far too long. That voice grew louder in the stillness, urging me to stop fighting, to stop resisting, to surrender to what I had always known was inevitable. The silence was not empty. It was filled with desire. It was filled with the heat of temptation and the ache of restraint. It was the perfect stage for betrayal, the perfect veil to cover sin. And in that moment, the silence became the most powerful language of all. Because what it said without words was far more dangerous, far more irresistible, than anything that could have ever been spoken aloud. The battle within me began the moment I stepped across the threshold. Desire pulled me forward, sharp and urgent, while guilt clung to me like a shadow that refused to let go. It was not just a physical space I had entered, but a war zone inside my own chest, where every breath carried both the thrill of what I craved and the sting of what I betrayed. I could feel the fire of hunger rising, hot and undeniable, but alongside it ran the cold, steady stream of conscience, whispering that this was wrong, that every step deeper into temptation was a step away from who I had been. My body moved faster than my mind, as though instinct had seized control and refused to listen to reason. Every sense awakened, eyes drinking in every detail, ears straining against the silence, skin alive with anticipation. Yet even as I surrendered to the rush, a voice inside begged me to stop, to turn back, to remember the weight of promises once made, and the boundaries once sworn to protect. That was the conflict. Two forces pulling with equal strength in opposite directions, tearing me apart in a way that left me trembling. Desire spoke with urgency, with passion, with promises of ecstasy I had never known. It painted visions of lips meeting, of hands entwined, of secrets shared in whispers that burned hotter than fire. It told me that life was too short to deny myself, that this moment was mine to claim, that what I wanted was more real than any rule written in the name of morality. But guilt was cunning, quiet yet relentless. It showed me the consequences, the betrayal etched on faces I had sworn never to hurt, the shame that would cling to me long after the heat of this moment cooled. It reminded me of the cost, and it was a cost too high to bear. And still, the pull of passion was stronger than chains. My heart raced toward danger, chasing the high of the forbidden, unwilling to listen to the reason that echoed faintly behind it. I told myself lies to quiet the guilt, whispering that this was only a moment, that no one would know, that what lived in the shadows could never hurt the light. But deep inside, I knew the truth. I knew that even if silence covered it, even if secrecy protected it, the fracture within me could never be undone. The conflict left me suspended between two selves. The one who longed with reckless abandon, and the one who clung desperately to honor. Every breath was a tug of war, every step a betrayal of one side in favor of the other. I was both victim and culprit, both weak and daring, both ashamed and exhilarated. And though guilt clawed at me, tearing pieces of my soul. Desire pressed harder, consuming, relentless, reminding me that once passion takes hold, resistance becomes nothing more than a memory of a battle already lost. Once the line was crossed, there was no turning back. The moment the threshold gave way beneath me, the world as I knew it shifted, and innocence slipped away like sand through my fingers. It wasn't just a step forward, it was a transformation, subtle yet irreversible. Like the instant dawn breaks through the night. Everything before that moment felt distant, blurred, as though belonging to a different lifetime. I could no longer pretend, no longer hide behind the illusion of control. The choice had been made, and with it came the certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. It was the kind of change that could not be undone. Like ink spilled on paper, it seeped into every part of me, staining thoughts, memories, and desires. I had crossed into a place where denial no longer existed, where excuses no longer mattered. Every breath I took on the other side of that line carried with it a weight, heavy and intoxicating all at once. The guilt, the thrill, the ache, the hunger. It all blended together until I could no longer separate one from the other. I knew that even if the world outside remained untouched, inside me everything had shifted permanently. The unlocked door was no longer just an accident or an oversight. It had become the symbol of my fall, the point of no return. There was no erasing the steps I had taken, no scrubbing clean the fire that had ignited. The forbidden had been tasted, and once tasted, it lingered, embedding itself deeper than reason or morality could reach. It lived now in the shadows of memory, in the unspoken spaces between words, in the way my heart beat whenever silence pressed against me. What was once pure became tainted with desire, and what was once safe now felt dangerous in the most alluring way. Every glance backward carried the sting of what was lost, while every glance forward pulsed with the fever of what had been awakened. I could not go back to the person I was before, because that version of me no longer existed. That version died the moment I let go of restraint, the moment I surrendered to the hunger I had always tried to silence. And yet, the finality of it brought with it a strange clarity. The truth was undeniable, etched into me like a scar. There was no pretending that nothing had happened. No smoothing over the edges of a decision, so sharp it cut everything it touched. I had chosen desire over discipline, passion over morality, and in doing so, I had sealed my fate. It was not just a fleeting mistake. It was a transformation, one that left me altered in ways no one could see, but I could never escape. Once that line was crossed, innocence was gone, and what remained was a new reality, a new self, a new weight I would carry forever. The door had been opened, and with it, the truth of who I was when temptation whispered, and I chose to listen. The moment I walked through that unlocked door, I stepped into a truth that could never again be hidden. It wasn't just about passion or temptation. It was about discovering a side of myself I had long buried, a side that refused to be silenced any longer. Desire has a way of stripping away the illusions we build, of revealing the person we are when rules fall away, and shadows become our only witness. I crossed a boundary that night. And though I carry both the weight and the wonder of it, I know one thing with certainty. Life will never return to the way it was before. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. To all of you who listened, who allowed me to share these words, thank you. Thank you for walking with me into the silence, for feeling the heat of conflict, for standing at the edge of forbidden desire and knowing its power. Stories like these remind us of how fragile we are, how human we are, and how dangerous it can be when our hearts speak louder than reason. And now, as I leave you with this confession, I bid you goodbye, for now. Carry these words gently, hold them close, and remember, every unlocked door hides a choice. And every choice writes a story you can never erase. Thank you.